Looks cool, huh? In this video, I'm gonna be looking a little bit on van life and how it relates to being creative or creative potential. But first, I thought, okay, I'm not a van lifer, so what would it be like if I were? And then I started to dream a little bit. Stay tuned, because after the dream, I'm gonna show you a couple things that are pretty cool on translate some of the benefits of the van life to your current life. Check it out.
Hey, Chelsea, want to go adventuring? Of course you do, right?
I'm a traveling spirit, I've seen many shores, from the West Pacific to the island of Kenya. They treat me like a son anywhere I go, and even though no one can tell, I still feel that I'm alone. I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone. Leave me stranded, I know how to handle it all on my own. On my own. I have learned that no one else can carry this load. It's a train where I'm the only passenger on board. Oh, there is beauty to enjoy on this road, but even so, I still feel that I'm alone. I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone. Leave me stranded, I know how to handle it all on my own. I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone. Leave me stranded, I know how to handle it all on my own. On my own.
Van life. What's cool about it is you can go places for the off season. Right now I'm in Lake Champlain. The off season, this park is totally empty. One other car. I just saw a couple leave. And that's pretty much it. You have the whole place to yourself. Usually this part costs to get into, but in the off season, it's free. What's cool is you get the whole lake to yourself in places like this. So when you're busy, you can't really take the time to come up here on things like that. But guess what's happening right now? A lot of people are coming up this way, but they're off in their cars looking at the fall foliage. It's leaf peeper season. So, you know, there is that. But still, van life offers you the chance to basically go to these places in the off season. That's a little cooler, but you don't have to deal with a lot of people. And in a lot of cases, you'll get there for free. So, in this episode, I want to talk about some of the cool things about van life that a lot of people are enjoying, that you can enjoy too, even if you're not like part of the van life.
There's one word that describes van life. It's freedom. Okay, so freedom's different for each person, but for me, it's about freedom of flow. So during a particular week, if you work the 9 to 5, you don't have control over most of your time. It's dedicated to a particular job. And even during that job, you'll have meetings and all sorts of obligations. Now, when you have the van life, you don't have those. All those things are removed, And so it allows you to go deeper within something. Let's say you want to write about something. You wake up, you have that inspiration, you can go and do it. In my mind, the freedom involves freedom of choice for any particular moment during the day. And it removes that obligation to say, I'm going to have these sets of habits. Now, you could be in the van life and still not have that freedom because your mind contains you into a particular spot. Think about a normal life. You wake up and you set on that armor of obligation, and you have that sword of knowledge that you hack away at to-do lists. And those to-do lists are great and everything, but as soon as you get them done during the day, it almost feels like you always could have done more. And it still is that weight, and you lift it a little bit while you're sleeping, and then it just comes right back on. And although some entrepreneurs have gone and said, well, look, let's do 3 obligations. 3 things that you get done, you're satisfied with your day, and the rest is just gravy, or you just let it go. And it's paring things down. It's minimalism. It's paring down your tasks. It's paring down, again, I'm speaking on freedom, paring down those obligations that you have. Now, most people, of course, 45% of their income on average, and it can be 42% if you're a homeowner, but if you're renting around 45 in New York City, I've heard some stats thrown around about 65%. It's a large chunk of your income. Oh, so when you free yourself from that obligation, you give much more flexibility to things that come at you. Now, you're not always going to have a set amount each month that comes at you, regardless of if you have the van life or regular life. It's variable. Emergencies happen and things like that. What seems to make the van life so key in terms of that freedom is when something like that comes at you, you have the ability to reduce your expenses quite dramatically because you've removed the housing part. You don't have to go anywhere and spend money on gas, and you can boondock, which means staying in a place for free. Camping out on BLM land, which is Bureau of Land Management, which is mainly out west. But it gives you that opportunity to basically downshift your expenses, and therefore your freedom opens up. And it's having that ability, that flexibility to do things. But the part of freedom that I like, that gets me, is the adventurous part. And here's where I think it really comes into play to overall philosophy, because it's not about the van. The van is cool, and people do van tours, and they talk about solar energy, and they talk about all the things, the technology or otherwise that go into a toilet. They go into van life, but it's not about the van. It's not about the bike. It's not about the camera. When you're talking about, photography and video, it's not about the camera. People focus on that part of it, but that's a far different aspect of it than the philosophy and what it does for people. And if you look and you read up on things, another part besides the freedom is community, and it's establishing yourself with other like-minded people on a regular basis. But the ambiguity, I think, and in terms of entrepreneurship and the tie-in to ambiguity, both for an entrepreneur and also living in a tiny house, living off the grid, hiking the PCT, Pacific Crest Trail, tiny houses, all that, minimalism, it pairs things down, but it also brings in a bit more ambiguity. And that ambiguity is key part of our muscle, our ability to be creative. Of course, being creative involves a lot of things, but one thing that is for sure is your ability to basically take and on the spur of the moment, take something to where you want it to go. And if you have all these other obligations, you're going to have an idea and you're going to be like, I'll get to it. But when you're out there in the van life, you can explore that right off the bat. You can go and have an adventure, and it brings in you meet other people, and it brings in so many other ideas that you wouldn't get otherwise. So you've got that freedom, and I think ambiguity that really invigorates people for a certain period of time. And that time aspect is another part of it. Time itself, if you look, most people think of hourly time, and it's really hard. If you look at van lifers, they'll talk about their release of that time, slowing down a bit and not thinking so much in terms of hourly rates, hourly things to get done. And it slows them down, and you get, in effect, a detox from that whole cultural or part of our culture, and it allows you to really enjoy the moment more. It takes a huge amount of stress off. And so time is one of those elements where instead of thinking about time in terms of hourly things to do, it opens up a whole broader aspect. Now, the other part of that is what you do with your time becomes much more fluid, and you can actually go down rabbit holes. You can actually do all kinds of stuff. But beyond the time, people end up being healthier. They're outside a lot more, and and nature and everything outside influences their choices and their decisions, but they're also outside. You can see people even hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. You watch a video from when they start and video when they end. It's dramatically different. Being outside, you can see van lifers, their first video to their current video, their health improves on the average. Their health improves greatly. You can see it in their complexion. They're outside, and it's a lot healthier. So then it becomes, well, okay, you're not a van lifer. Maybe you're never going to become one. It's interesting, the minimalism, how it keys into entrepreneurial spirit. But if you're there and you want to stay in your spot, it's like, well, I like these benefits that the van life talks about, minimalism and all that. So how does that key into my regular life? Here's some ideas for that. See, it has to do with your own time and thinking about time in terms of retirement. Okay, and it doesn't have to be retirement. It's if you look at professors in universities, they'll take a sabbatical. Let me give you a little bit of background. My mother, before she died of cancer, she would actually work during the summer, then quit and take off in a Toyota, one of those Toyota campers, like from a 74 Toyota camper. It's like a Dolphin. And she would take off to Mexico and live out of that. And what she called it are mini retirements. Okay. And it's for that period of time. And then she came back to work to feed that time. And it's that aspect you could consider, whether it be a sabbatical of sorts or whether you take a chunk of time. And we're not talking about a vacation. It has an entirely different focus. It's not a vacation. It's actually living, and you're not, and it just has a different intentionality, a different focus. You're living with the people around you, and you're exploring in ways you wouldn't otherwise. And some professors who take these sabbaticals, they come back with more ideas than they had before and are able to write and create a lot more effectively. And so what I'm saying is, why not look at ways you can basically go for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year, and take that time off away from your life. You know, the van lifers, not all of them are going to stay with it for their whole life. Chances are, on average, the van lifers will go for a certain period of time, and then they'll decide on something else. It is a lifestyle change, and some of them do stay till they die. But on average, more of them will stay. You know, there's this tipping point. Some talk about a year and a half. Some talk about a year. Some talk about 5 years. You know, whatever it might be, and they might even come back to it. But that's the whole thing. It's the flexibility to basically leverage those elements of life to give you a totally different perspective. It's that life compass, right? You've got that life compass, and when you step outside of it, you look at your map, your life map again. And when you take that sabbatical, it allows you to see where you're at. You take the time to look at where you're at with your life compass, and does it make sense on where you're going? It re-engages you with that, your motivations, and you become much more refreshed, and you have a deeper understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it, so that you're not at the end of your life going, oh crap, and looking at your life map at the end going, oops, oh wow. You know, so it's taking those moments outside of normal existence, normal life, and doing something completely different, hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, taking off and traveling, to another country. It's taking off in a van and living out for a while. It's, maybe living in a tiny house for a while, getting rid of possessions, minimalism. It can be anything. But the idea is that it's a time outside of your normal existence that allows you to see it differently. Of course, anybody can do it. You just have to plan for it. With the van life, of course, and paring things down, you have more flexibility and choices. Okay, so the other part of that is time. Slowing down a bit and allowing for exploration. And we're talking about like maybe a day. You don't do anything. You get out of the house and you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're going to be doing. You're just adventuring. You're exploring. Take a day and do that. Don't have any agenda. And when you go out and explore and you adventure and you find there's a wondrous thing that happens, the people you meet, the synchronicities that happen. You don't have to travel around the globe or even across the country for that to happen. You can take a day, even just a day, and do that. And in your local area, you'll go places you've never been before, explore some road or street, avenue, dirt road, wherever that you've never explored before, and just see where it takes you. And maybe do that for 2 days, maybe do it for a week. The whole idea is you can take these mini things where you don't have the normal agenda-focused parameters of your life. Now, another aspect of this is just being willing to have ambiguity more, and I think that's a real key part. Strength of being a creative entrepreneur, I think, relies heavily on being able to handle ambiguity. Things come at you in different ways, and if let's say you're up there in space, you have to be able to take things from your existing, what's around you, and create solutions. That's the same idea, but you put it in your own life. And instead, right now we're a how-to culture. It's like we're how-to'd to death in terms of our ability to basically take things and figure them out. And when you're set with something and you have to figure it out, you get creative. And if you do that on a regular basis, you can actually transfer that over to the rest of your life in terms of being a little more creative, in terms of looking for solutions that might not that you might not otherwise, rather than just reaching for the how-to video and seeing how to do something. Obviously, this can get you in all kinds of trouble, and that's the whole idea. It's being willing to get into sticky situations and then get yourself out of it. I think there's a strength to that, an entrepreneurial spirit that I think can make a resurgence through the tiny houses, through van life, and off-grid living, where you really delve into what makes energy, how much energy do you use. It gives you a different perspective. I love the idea of the van life. I've had a couple vans myself. I actually, right before I graduated from college, I lived out of my van for 3 months because, in college, you usually don't have much money. So I wanted to move across country. And in order to do that, I thought, okay, what can I do? And I thought, let's just live out of my van for 3 months and save on rent and use that money to get myself across and set up. So that's exactly what I did. And I was studying, living out of my van, and it was a challenge to go, because I wasn't adventuring and traveling. There was nothing really exciting about it. I was more using it as a sleeping spot, and I would use the campus to study and what have you. But I found myself, really feeling like I was not really wanted in most areas. I had to kind of sneak around to see where can I sleep. And that's where you get into what van lifers call stealth camping, boondocking, and so on. So it's interesting because that life, moved forward to now. That was a while ago, but move forward to now, and you get a lot more information and perspective and ability to share that information, not only amongst other people doing the same thing, but also those not doing it, so that when they see someone, they're not apt to necessarily have the perspective that the news might give you, because the news gives you filters. If you've never seen someone living out of their van, you're going to think negatively on it because the information that you've received is from the media. But when you receive it direct from the van lifers, you get a far different perspective. And I think that aids the ability for people to do that, besides the technology, of course. Now, obviously, not all van lifers are great, and you've got all kinds of problems. Cities responding to those problems in various ways, making all kinds of rules and regulations. In some cases, the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, is shutting down places, or they're looking at actually charging for staying in a place with no amenities at all. So you've got trash, you've got people who really disrespect the whole situation. And amongst that, you've got people who are really hurting in terms of they've chosen the van life not out of intentionality, but because they have to. They've lost their house, they're living on the street. And that's far different from the others who might have chosen it intentionally, or you have the RVers, and some people with, $550,000 RVs, and you've got them all kind of traveling about, living, And in general, the RVs are more acceptable than, of course, the vans. But a lot of them are doing some of the similar things. They're seeking adventure, but they're also seeking locations where, let's say you've got $1 million home. You're never going to see that view in the morning unless you've got a van or an RV, in which case you get to have those views in the morning. And it may be only a couple days, but it's enough to give you your spirit joy. And you don't have to have $1 million. And that's the whole idea. It's leveraging the van experience or RVing, whatever it might be, so that you can engage your spirit, enliven it, and become much more motivated towards creating and living and being a full-on person rather than just paying the bills. So I think there are aspects of the van life and tiny living and minimalism that can be kind of translated over so that you can leverage that in your own life. And eventually maybe you try it, maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. But you give yourself a chance to see your life from a totally different perspective. Because unless you whip out that compass, that life compass, and look at your life map and go, where am I, in relation to some of the ideals I have, unless you pull yourself completely out of that sometimes and hit that reset button, you're going to find yourself carrying weight that you might not need to. So that's the whole idea. And I'm hoping you enjoyed this video. Obviously, I'm not a van lifer. I do have some perspectives. I've traveled across the country. I've lived in Japan for 3 years, and I've gone and done things that are somewhat similar. And so I have that perspective. I did, hang out with my mom and get her perspective on, the mini retirements. And it's lucky that she did that because she died before she retired. She never got to have retirement, Social Security, and so on. So it's important, I think, in my own life, and I hope in others, where we take and really look at living in terms of where you are now, no matter what age you are, where you are now, and what you want to do, not in terms of retirement, because I think retirement is a myth. I really don't think we're going to ever really retire, but people need to stay active. And so that's one reason why. Also, many others, but I do think that it's more of a myth. You want to stay active. You want to stay engaged with people. And so you're going to be part of life. You're not just going to retire, so to speak. No, you're going to engage with communities, and how that works, who knows? But it's a myth to think you're just going to go off to La La Land. It's a myth to think you're just going to go off into this sunset and everything's going to be great and hunky-dory. It's not. When just because you retire doesn't mean everything's grand. You have all the different challenges that come up. They just change. And one of those challenges is how to keep living. Most people in America are not going to have enough money to retire. They're just not. Just think about it. Even when people are working, if it takes 45% of their income, give or take, to actually just stay in one place, and they're going to get less money when they retire than when they're working, yeah, you're going to have a hard time retiring. So I just think it's better to look at life overall. You're always going to be active. You're always going to be contributing and doing something. It's healthier that way. And you're also probably going to need to. So I put it forth to you that instead of looking at retirement in terms of all or nothing, look at what the van lifers prescribe and think about streams of income. Many of them that do well actually prescribe that you have multiple streams of income. I call them profit engines. And the reason is because they create a profit, and usually they're an engine, meaning you start them and they kind of run on their own. They still need to be managed, but they run on their own. These profit engines are something that give you much more stability than a regular job, because a regular job, again, you could be one decision away, one person making one decision away from you not having that job. And then what do you have? So these multiple streams of income are important, not just from an entrepreneurial aspect, but also just moving forward in life in terms of being more stable. If you look at nature and how it grows things, and our ideal is a monocrop that ends up failing and having to have a lot of subsidies and all kinds of energy thrown out of it. Whereas if you look at the diversity, the biodiversity that happens normally within nature, think about your own life and your own biodiversity in terms of income, in terms of people, in terms of everything. You want to you want to increase your diversity. And having a job is like having a monocrop. So you're spending a lot of money and there's a lot of maintenance to have that life actually work. I'm going to have a link to a video several videos in the description from clips that I've used, but also one or two that kind of show you. There's just one really good one you got to watch, and it'll be in the playlist as well. But it basically shows you how much it costs to work, how much you're paying to actually work. It's eye-opening, really eye-opening. It's also kind of depressing. But it doesn't have to be. Really wanted to put this out there because I've been doing pottery and listening to so many van lifers. So I love it. These guys are awesome. And the whole life, tiny houses, even just hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, the spirit, the community, the perspective that gives you is just so it's just so inspiring. And I just think that to live more creatively, I just think to be more creative, bringing those elements from minimalism and from these different parts are really good at kind of resetting and reinvigorating your own motivations and bringing more life to your creative potential. So I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm going to continue this series. I'm going to continue this series, and I have some funny videos coming I think you're going to like. And, you know, it pokes fun at the life, but it's still good. It's all good. So hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss them. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.